A Chiro Golden interview here today. Dr. Joe Strauss on a almost spring day, one day away from spring. And oh, by the way, happy late birthday.
Oh, thank you. I understand your son's birthday.
My son's birthday was yesterday also.
Wow.
Yeah.
I used to have about a half dozen practice members whose birthday were on the same day as mine. Yeah.
I got a guy in our office whose birthday was yesterday also. So we've got one person who had a birthday yesterday in the office.
His name? Anybody's name Joseph?
No.
Oh.
Well, my son's middle name is Joseph.
Oh.
Yeah. Eric Joseph.
How did you get that?
My father-in-law, his name is Joe.
Oh, okay.
Joseph. Yeah.
Because I think there were 5 other kids born the same day as me. 4 Josephs and 1 Josephine.
Oh, funny.
March 19th is St. Joseph's Day.
Oh.
but we weren't Catholic, but my mother liked the doctor and he put us in that. It was a Catholic hospital. So the nuns come in and said, well, we know what you're going to name your son. It's like, and my mother said, and when she told the nuns, so they were all the nurses were nuns in those days.
Uh-huh.
And when she told them that my name was going to be Joseph, they said, because St. Joseph's Day. And my mom said, no, we weren't even Catholic. That was because that was my father's name.
Yeah.
So that's how Joseph. And,
funny. Well, there you go.
So I had a number of practice members named Joseph who were born on that same day. I guess they were Catholic kids.
They were Catholic. Yep.
I was always disappointed because I grew up in Philadelphia and pretty much near the Nazareth Hospital, which was a Catholic hospital, and I was always upset because all the kids in the neighborhood who were Catholic got my birthday off because Feast of St. Joseph, and I had to go to school because I went to public school. I had to go to school on my birthday, and all the kids who went to parochial school, they got my birthday off. So.
They were celebrating your birthday.
Yeah.
All right. So
I didn't have to eat fish on Friday.
Yeah, right.
If my birthday was on a Friday.
Yes.
So anyway.
So today we want to cover Principle 20, a big one here, of course. But before that, we already did some history about your history of your birthday, but you want to cover a little more history. So what have you got for us? What were you thinking about?
Well, I actually I lost a good friend last month, and Glenn Hultgren. He was one of the founders of the Christian Chiropractic Association it's in Colorado, and he passed away on the 5th of February, and so I just wanted to acknowledge him.
Okay.
And the work that he did. He graduated from Palmer in 1955, but he was influenced by a fellow who graduated in 1939 from Palmer, and I think it was in 1953, Palmer invited a chiropractor from who was a missionary in Ethiopia, and he told about the work that he did in Ethiopia, anyway, so this chiropractor friend of mine, he graduated in 55. He and some other group, they started this organization called the Christian Chiropractic Association, and they had when Glenn, my friend, his mother passed away, and she left some money. They decided to start a work in Ethiopia, and self-sustaining work, and providing chiropractic to lepers in Ethiopia. And I maybe some of your viewers don't know, but leprosy, in fact, I recently heard a minister talk about leprosy, and he mentioned it was a skin disease, and actually it's a disease that involves the nerves.
Yes.
And so that's why these chiropractors felt that that chiropractic could be beneficial to somebody with leprosy. And I don't think there's any I think the last leprosy colony in the United States, I think, closed in Louisiana in 19 I don't know when, but anyway, this fellow was in Ethiopia, and so they started this leprosy research center to provide chiropractic care for leprosy in Ethiopia. And it was very, very successful. In fact, I attended a conference of the Christian Chiropractic Association in 1991. My cousin was the keynote speaker there that week, and so he was from California in the he lived in the San Diego area, and so we went out and visited him for a week, and then he and his wife and my wife and I, we drove down to San Diego from where he lived, and he spoke through the week there. And anyway, I attended one of the sessions. They had a videotape of the leprosy colony over there in Ethiopia and the work that they were doing. They had provided scholarships. The Christian Chiropractic Association provided scholarships for two young Ethiopians to go to Palmer and then go back to Ethiopia. And through this friend of mine's mother who passed away, they provided an ongoing research center that would continue to provide money for supporting this work there. And this fellow who was named Robert Thompson, he was the individual he was a missionary in Ethiopia, and he was the one who started this this leprosy colony and was instrumental in starting it. And so they continued, and I don't know whether it's still in existence now, but apparently they had some interesting results, and because again it was a neurological problem where apparently it attacked the nerves, and the people got disfigured and all, and because of the damage to the nerves, what would happen was the patient would bump a finger or toes or something like that, and they wouldn't heal because of the effect of the nerves on there, and so they become disfigured. And of course, in the ancient days, it was considered a real serious disease, and I think it's pretty much wiped out now. But the organization provided these scholarships for these two boys from Ethiopia come back to go to Palmer, and they graduated from Palmer and went back. I don't know whether either of them are even living now. It was like 91 where I saw this video of the work that they're doing with lepers down in Ethiopia. But it was. So
how did you meet Glenn?
Well, I met Glenn at one of the conferences that we went to. 91 was the first one I attended, and I was selected as Chiropractor of the Year in 2000 and something, and so I've seen him since then. In 1 year they had the convention out in Colorado, and so I traveled out there and had lunch with him and his wife and my wife, and
is that where he practiced? Was out in Colorado?
He practiced in I think he practiced in really Colorado,
Mm.
and just until a couple of years ago,
Mm.
he retired, and
How old was
she was.
he?
Oh, I don't know. He was.
He graduated in '55 from chiropractic school.
Yeah, he went to the University of Jamestown in North Dakota, and before his undergraduate, and then he went to Davenport to attend Palmer, and
So he was there with BJ.
yeah, BJ actually started in '39. They had the convention, the Lyceum in Palmer. In those days, they called it Lyceum, and I think there were about 7,000 or 8,000 chiropractors attended this 1930, this 39, when this
Yeah.
other fellow who got him interested was there, and that was they had some pretty big crowds in those days to
Yeah.
Lyceum, and I don't know why I don't know when Palmer got rid of Lyceum, but they did.
That's too bad.
And then they called it Homecoming after that. But Glenn graduated in '55,
Nice.
and he was the last founding member of the organization who he passed away just last month, and so it was
Well,
lost. I guess we're losing chiropractors left and right these days, and so
that's how we have things like this. We can make sure we keep replacing those good ones with more good chiropractors.
Yeah. He was a strictly upper cervical man, because we had some discussions on that, and various discussions on chiropractic over the years, and
Nice.
and I enjoyed having lunch with him. We traveled around Colorado one afternoon, and we had a free time, and had a real enjoyable time having lunch with him and his wife.
Mhm.
And so anyway, that was my
Well,
experience. But anyway, they had some real unbelievably exciting things happen. You know, when they just adjusted these lepers in Ethiopia, and in fact, I think Dr. Thompson, who's Dr. Thompson, I think, was a Canadian, and he visited Ethiopia during World War II, and as a Canadian soldier, and then when they were fighting the Germans in Ethiopia, and he was so well respected after he got out of the service. He went back to Ethiopia to be a chiropractic missionary.
Wow.
And he was actually given an award by the Emperor of Ethiopia.
Wow.
His name was Haile Selassie at the time. And he was given an award by him for all the work that he did with the lepers in Ethiopia.
Wow.
And changes took place, because as we know that the body does have a better capacity to heal itself.
Yes.
when there's nerve interference removed, and he felt that the nerve interference that would be removed or the correct adjusted, they would have they would see some neurological changes,
Right.
and they did and see so much so that the Emperor of Ethiopia
Wow.
gave him
That's
an
cool.
award for the changes that he made in people's over there.
Wow.
And
well, that's so cool. Our profession has such an awesome history. So things like that very few people even know about. This whole experience in Ethiopia is just neat. That the impact chiropractic has had on the world. And yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I think that there's even some, it seems there's like some effects that people are having, around the world now, where chiropractic is going around the world, and a lot of schools are opening up,
Mm-hmm.
and in other countries, and so what used to be strictly an American practice, actually a Midwestern United States practice, is now
Yeah,
something that we can see all around the world. And
absolutely.
there are a couple of new schools that have opened up over the years, and I don't know whether they're strictly straight schools, or whether they are doing other things beside chiropractic, but people are having their lives changed by chiropractic care, and for the better. So anyway,
Of course, we prefer those schools to be strictly straight schools, but even if it's not, there's still going to be influences like you and other people who are getting into those schools who can change the minds and the way people think about chiropractic. I went to Northwestern, and it was a very, obviously not a straight school at all, quite the opposite. And my first trimester there, I heard Reggie Gold speak, and that was it. And so,
yeah, there's a lot of students, and in fact, I still have. I just sent three of my books off to a fellow in Spain who wanted one of my books, and
yeah.
three different books he ordered just this past week, and that's my signature is not so good these days, but I had to practice for a while to get my signature so it was legible. But
Well, my signature's never been legible, so I don't.
well, that's why I said yeah, doctors' signatures are never legible.
Right,
So
right.
so
The less legible a signature is, the cooler it is. You just slap it on there real quick.
yeah. Well, I've signed a lot of books over the years, and I've got to the point where I didn't even worry too much about what my signature looked like, and
Yeah.
It's gotten worse over the years.
Wow.
But anyway, so we're kind of at a change at this point, where we're into finally innate intelligence.
Yes.
And where do we leave off with the 18 or 19? Where were we?
Last time we finished principle 19, so we are now on principle number 20, innate intelligence.
It is the change, I guess, is the concept of innate intelligence.
And this is it. This is chiropractic right here. I mean, it's, I was just thinking about this the other day, how there are other professionals who are manipulating the spine, and to the layperson, it might appear to be very similar to what we do, but only chiropractors can adjust to allow the body's innate intelligence to better express itself. No matter what any other professions do that might look like an adjustment, this is ours right here. This is what makes chiropractic unique. And so it's so important that we have an ability to communicate this to people and have an understanding ourselves of what innate intelligence is, so that we can communicate it to people. But this is a big one.
Yeah, I think that's important. That's the important distinction that we have in chiropractic, is that we are working with the innate intelligence of the body. And even though I had a practice member who was going to school in Philadelphia, and he lived up in the area where I'm living now, but he would come home and come to school and go in Philadelphia, and then every weekend he would go back home to where where he was
Mm.
originally from and where he was eventually going to practice. And but he was going to osteopathic school in Philadelphia. I think the Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine, I think it was called. And in fact, he gave me a book at one time on osteopathy, and it was amazing how many concepts were in the practice of osteopathy. Even though I've met a few osteopaths over the years, and they don't really do it anymore.
Right.
And for a while, they called themselves five-fingered osteopaths, and but I've met some recently, and they don't really even do that anymore. They just pretty much practice medicine. In fact, they're in some of the hospitals and in this area. A number of the osteopaths in this area are just practice, don't do any kind of manipulation at all.
Right. Now you see that happen in that profession, and I don't know why exactly. You know better about this than I do, but maybe one of the reasons why osteopaths have gone the way that they've gone is because they don't have a philosophy. I don't know. Maybe they do. Maybe they don't. Maybe they don't. But I think one of the things that has helped keep chiropractic, even though we have moved closer in that direction, unfortunately, in many ways, but as a whole, we've been able to keep ourselves separate from the medical profession because of our philosophy. We have something that is unique to offer, and I don't know if osteopaths do or not, but you can maybe shed some light on that if you know or not. But it seems to me maybe that's one of the reasons why they've gone the way they've gone.
Yeah, in fact, I used to have discussion with people, and they'd say, if we keep going like we're going, we'll be just like the osteopaths. And I said, yeah, that's the problem that I found is if we keep going like we are, we will unfortunately be just like the osteopaths.
Yes.
And that would be something that would really, really, I think, lose the uniqueness of chiropractic, and something that we're involved with trying to prevent that from happening.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
the philosophy helps us to keep on that track.
Yeah, a lot of chiropractors over the years have endeavored to try to prevent that slide into the practice of medicine,
right,
which is what we're doing, and as a profession, and that's one of the functions of this blog that you have on right now, is help prevent that. And the sad thing is losing the uniqueness of chiropractic, and losing the approach that we have of removing interference to the nervous system so that the innate intelligence of the body can work better. And this book that this osteopathic student gave me, it had certain principles and certain concepts in there that look very much like what we were talking about, but it really, the osteopaths are not using it anymore, or not talking about it anymore, and they're just mainly practicing medicine. In fact, I attend. I have a doctor who I see as a family doctor who is an osteopath, and she graduated from osteopathic school, and yet she does nothing but practice medicine anymore. And if you need medicine, I get it. She'd be just as good as an MD to get medical expertise from, but she has no desire, no intention to do anything that would in any way resemble an adjustment of the spine. And I have to go to a chiropractor to get that.
Yes.
And that's kind of hard to find one who is interested in doing that these days. So many of them are doing everything else but chiropractic, and that's But
It's a sad thing. A sad thing to see, especially when you think about most of the things that chiropractors do that are not chiropractic. They're things that most anybody could do without any sort of professional degree. Anyone can give someone supplements, and it's so sad to think you went to school to be a chiropractor and do that thing. But
yeah, instead they want to do what could be done in the local gym, if they whether it's
exactly.
under, or a physical therapist, or
Yeah.
a nutritional
Yep.
expertise, and it's really sad they don't don't want to do the one thing that they can do that nobody else can do, and that's correct vertebral subluxation to allow
You,
the
you think about that
body.
from just a business standpoint for a moment. How great of a business model that is. You're providing something that nobody else can provide. You have a service that they can't get anywhere else. And so just from that standpoint, it makes sense that you should want to practice this way. But there's obviously bigger and better reasons than that. But that's one of them. They can go anywhere and get those other things like you mentioned, but they can only come to you to have their body's innate intelligence better expressed in themselves.
Yeah, I think that of course the challenge that we have as chiropractors is to get people to understand that concept, and to understand what it is we do, and what it's all about. And that kind of ties in with what I've been speaking about just this minute there a few minutes ago, is that when most people don't think of chiropractic, they don't think of a chiropractor correcting subluxations to allow the innate wisdom of the body to work better. They just think about the people going to a chiropractor for some physical ailment that they have, and that the chiropractor is going to address that physical ailment. And that's gone from treating and addressing leprosy to addressing all kinds of medical conditions, to the point now where most people it's just trying to address musculoskeletal conditions, and that's what most chiropractors have limited their practice to, just that.
Mm-hmm.
And now if they do if they want to do anything else, then they have to really get into trying to duplicate or replicate something that the medical profession is doing, or some practitioner is doing, and that's really losing.
Usually the profession they're trying to replicate, those people do it better anyway, because that's what they do. So the replication is a cheap ripoff of the original. So
yeah, I attended once. I visited one chiropractic school, which shall remain not nameless, but
it was Northwestern, wasn't it?
Pardon me?
I said it was Northwestern, wasn't it?
The instructor was saying, well, if we allow our best students to do rounds in hospitals, and I said that the instructor said this in the classroom, and I said, well, I would think you would allow your worst students to do rounds in the hospitals. And that didn't go over too big. I think I was made back to that school to
it's funny. So,
but anyway,
intelligence here. I wanted to get your thoughts on a few things and just dig in deeper here. There's so many great little in Stevenson's book here, and when he goes into the deeper explanation of innate intelligence, gives an analogy. I love how he talks about, and this is where the analogy comes from that so many of us chiropractors have used, that there's no scientist on the planet that can make one living cell. You just can't do it. You can't. We know the components of the cell. We know what it's kind of made up of, but to sit there and take from scratch and take those components and make it a living thing, we can't do that. But our body's innate intelligence can take from an apple, from a hamburger, whatever we ate, and turn that into a living cell in our body. And that's just an amazing thing when you really think about what's happening there and how awesome that is.
Yeah, what's amazing to me is that the innate intelligence of the body has to take something that was once living and now it's non-living, and then make it once again into
Yeah.
tissue, and only the innate intelligence of the body can do that. I used to give the students in my philosophy class, the challenge of explaining the difference between the which has more innate intelligence, a mouse or an elephant, and that principle is identical in both. And of course, they have to write a so many word essay on which has more innate intelligence, and the answer is, well, they both have the same amount of innate intelligence. The matter may be configured differently in an elephant as it is in a mouse, but it is the same amount of the amount of innate intelligence is the same, because it's and the principle is the same. And whether we're talking about a law of gravity is the same when you drop two different size objects from a height, they both hit the ground at the same time, because the law acts the same on the both. And the law of gravity and the law of life, which is what I think Stevenson and BJ refer to as innate intelligence, as the law of life. The law of life is the same in both, and that's why an elephant and a mouse have the same amount of innate intelligence. It's just that the one has more matter than the other, and the matter might be configured differently in a human being and a mouse. But they have the same amount of, and the same principle is expressing itself totally through both, unless you have a mouse or an elephant that's subluxated, then may not be expressing the same amount of intelligence, but it is designed to and meant to have the same amount of intelligence in it. So I think that that's where we kind of break with the principles of innate intelligence and universal intelligence. And of course, one other question I would ask is, well, how do we make the distinction between something that's expressing innate intelligence and something expressing universal intelligence? Of course, our answer is that one is living matter and one is non-living matter. So if you look at matter from a standpoint of the intelligence, then they're really, you can say they're the same, because there is universal intelligence of all matter, but living matter expresses innate intelligence in a different way. And so it's innate intelligence. So if you're looking at the matter from the matter standpoint, then there is a difference between innate and universal intelligence. If you're looking at the matter from the matter standpoint, then a lot of people say, well, with the same, it's the same, and that's why BJ can, we've talked about this, I think, in these discussions, that people say, well, innate intelligence or universal intelligence is the same as God, and of course, I find that that's not. Then they're different. They're different. One's a theological concept, and one is a natural or nature concept. There's nature in a rock, which we call universal intelligence, but there's no nature in God is supernatural. God is supernatural, and I think we need to make that distinction and recognize that we deal with natural thing. That goes back to this concept of the principle or the discussion that I had with the problem of chiropractic and taking care of people with leprosy. The fact that the leper is taking care of a leper with a natural method that involves the nature of natural things. As BJ said, and Stevenson writes in his textbook, chiropractic is things natural. Mm-hmm. And of course, the history of leprosy actually involved supernatural addressing of
right.
of leprosy in the biblical
right.
of leprosy. It was a horrible disease, and but it was addressed supernaturally by
right.
by Jesus in taking care of people, and he addressed it and cured it supernaturally, whereas the chiropractors who followed Dr. Robert Thompson down in Ethiopia were taking care of it naturally,
right.
The natural ability of the body to heal itself, which can do with limitations in time and limitations of matter. And some people, they got
right.
Different results with because some people had limitations of time and matter, which is something that we recognize in chiropractic, and a principle that hopefully we'll get to one of these days.
Well, on that there, you're talking about how they describe chiropractic as a study of all things natural, and too many people, I think, have misused that in an effort to, or study of things natural, not all things natural. They've misused that to then use other things in the profession, and then it's also, but what you're saying there is that's the way of them describing that it's not a supernatural thing. It's just the study of things natural, and that goes on to, at the very end of Stevenson's more in-depth description or explanation of innate intelligence, he has a great point here, and he says, let us in this step of our study look upon innate intelligence less romantically and more scientifically, not as a little god coldly aloof somewhere in our bodies, whom we personify with a capitalized name, and whom the more conceited of us think we must chastise occasionally, but as a mathematical law of nature. So right there, he's saying this is not a God thing. I mean, it's a natural phenomenon that all living things experience. And that's where I think too many people, maybe chiropractors, miss that, and they talk about innate intelligence as if it is synonymous with God, or universal intelligence is synonymous with God. But clearly here Stevenson would say the opposite.
Yeah, I think you make a great point when you say that a lot of chiropractors take that term, all things natural, and no, chiropractic doesn't deal with all things natural. It just deals with something that is natural. It doesn't mean that all things are natural. Many medications, drugs are natural substances that are put into people's bodies, but they're not all things natural. And so I think that we need to recognize that we don't deal with all things natural. We just deal with one thing that's natural, and that's the fact that the body does have the ability to heal itself,
right.
And that is an inborn wisdom within the body, within living things, that can express itself a little more fully when any interference nerve system is removed. Whether that nerve system is in a mouse, an elephant, or a leper, within limitations, that has there is a difference, and we recognize that difference in chiropractic, and we address one aspect of nature, and that is the natural ability of the body to heal itself. And
it's amazing how just the addition of one word completely changes the whole meaning of a definition, because you read it right here. And chiropractic defined that chiropractic is a philosophy, science, and art, which I think is kind of interesting. Now, when everyone talks about chiropractic, they say art, science, and philosophy. They put philosophy last. But Stevenson says chiropractic is a philosophy, science, and art of things natural. There's no all things natural in that definition. The word all is not present there. And
I think
I've seen a version of the Bible that says, in the beginning there was a God. They put the word and it completely, that's destroys the whole real meaning of that. So the same thing goes here. We put that word all in there, and now it completely changes it. And that's a little slight thing, but it's not accurate. So anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but I just wanted to read that real quick.
Yeah, that's an important point, because in fact there's different thinking among theologians as far as understanding the words and understanding the original languages that the Bible is written in, and the difference between the absence of a definite article and the presence of a definite article. And the absence of definite article in the Greek is would be translated the, and in the presence of the definite article would be translated a, and that's why some people say in the beginning was a God, and no, it's in the beginning was the God, you know, and that puts greater emphasis upon the existence of deity rather than a God, and then we have differences among people who translate that differently, and that creates a problem. And so that's the problem that we have in chiropractic. A similar problem where we would say all things natural, and that justifies using any kind of biological substances or nutritional substances or exercise procedures. If all those things are natural, exercise is natural. It's just not chiropractic, and we think there's fine to use those things. We just don't call it chiropractic. And when you go out and work out and exercise, you recognize it's beneficial and it's natural, but you also recognize that it's not chiropractic.
Right.
And I think that's what we need to do. So we just kind of limit what we do and define more clearly what we do, and that's our whole emphasis, and that's what I've been trying to do with my books over the years, is to more clearly delineate what chiropractic is and what chiropractic is not. Chiropractic is natural, because it's the body that's making the adjustment. We just introduce a force into that body to enable, take that force and make a chiropractic adjustment out of it, and that's natural. But it's not all things natural. There are things that are natural that are not chiropractic.
It's amazing how those little things sneak into all professions, but how that one word, because I've heard that said so many times from the stage, people speaking when they're describing chiropractic. But that's why we have to, if we want to, I don't want to ever come across as like some kind of snob, and judging people. But if we're going to study this stuff, let's do it properly and let's do it accurately and use the right words, because it matters. And let's do our best to understand it from a truthful or honest standpoint and not twist things around.
Right. And is that twisting around or changing the wording
Yeah.
for a particular purpose, and
Yes.
or is it and when you do that, are you being true to what you're talking about? And I I remember that my father-in-law, I've probably told this before, my father-in-law was a magician and a professional magician, and he described himself as the gay deceiver. And those were the years before. Then he finally had to change the name because it had a different connotation as
Yeah.
he thought in years that definition of a gay deceiver changed, and so he had to change his business card as to how he described himself, and because words change and language change, and even words like chiropractic medicine
Oh,
is confusing, and to say that you practice chiropractic medicine, and people used to say that to me once in a while, and I'd have to correct them. And even terms like treatment and
right.
adjustment, I was so specific that I wanted to change. I didn't want people to say that I used used treatment. I used an
Right.
adjustment, and we really have to be specific. And the more specific we are, and I think BJ was one who said, chiropractic is either specific or it's nothing. And
Yes. Yeah.
and the more specific we describe what we do in chiropractic, the more people are going to understand it, and the more people are going to have the ability to
Right.
decide whether that's something they want or something that they
Right.
want something.
It's
And
funny, a lot of people are against using these words because they want to use words that they think people are already familiar with, treatment or whatever it might be. And they feel that somehow if we use our language, it confuses people, but it has just the opposite effect. It makes it much more clear. Whereas if we're using medical terms and trying to mix that in with chiropractic stuff, that's very confusing to people. But if we have clear language and explain what those words mean to people, it creates great clarity.
Right. And I think that's important that we do that, because we want to teach people, and we want people to understand what it is we're doing and what it is we're not doing, and what our limitations are and what our limitations are not. And
Right.
our limitations are not based upon what we do, but what the body does and what the body can do, and that's what we're talking about. And the body can do that if if interference is removed. The body may or may not be able to do that. We
Right.
deal with what the body is able to do, and say if the body is not able to do that, then perhaps they need to go to somebody else to have that procedure done, or that treatment, or that be addressed. But that's not what we do in
Right.
chiropractic. And I think the more that we understand that, the more that we're able to communicate that to people, uh, the more we can have a we can have a clear understanding in our minds, and in the minds of those people who would want to choose what we do in
Right.
chiropractic, and recognize that if they want something else, they
Yeah.
need to go to somebody else and have that procedure
Well,
done.
that clarity of mind makes me think of a BJ quote of who can anchor to an unanchored mind. If people can't follow you or, anchor to you, so to speak, if your mind is scattered and you don't really know what you're doing yourself. So, but if you have that clarity and understanding of what you're providing, people can anchor to that and then follow and receive the care that's going to benefit them for their lifetime.
Yeah, and I think that's important, that people understand what it is, and that's what we're really doing today with these principles is realizing that they are the anchor for chiropractic,
Yeah.
And we need to need to anchor onto something
Yep.
so solid. You can't just allow that anchor to drag along the bottom of a riverbed. It's got to touch something
Yeah.
and it's got to anchor to something that's stable.
Right. Right.
It's going to hold, and
Yep.
that's what we're trying to get people to understand, that this is the anchor of chiropractic. We have to make those words clear, and that anchor clear as far as people understanding what it is we do. And I think the 33 principles, maybe they can be worded a little bit better and understood a little bit better, but they do provide the anchor for what we do in chiropractic. And I think the more we anchor to those principles, the better off we are as far as the profession is concerned, and the better off that the public is to understand what we do and grasp what we do. And
well, I'm glad that we have someone like you to anchor, as our anchor, to anchor to, because you've got this solid foundation and understanding. So it's awesome.
Well, thank you for carrying on what that is, because there's too few chiropractors out there who are anchored to something that's stable. And I think one of the biggest things that the most important things that I ever hear when I explain chiropractic to the general public is, well, that just makes so much sense, when you explain it to them.
Yeah.
One of the things that I think most people who practice our approach to chiropractic, what the response they get to people that, well, really that makes logical sense. And I think that's why people need to hear and understand, and that what it is that chiropractic is all about and what we're doing. And
absolutely,
maybe it'll have to be done by people in other parts of the world to get people to understand it. But at least we're doing what we can to get it across to people and get them done. And I thank you for the part that you're playing in that. And we'll leave it at that, because we're going to get into this idea of innate intelligence and what it really is all about a little bit more as we now are in the second section of our philosophy, our 33 principles. So thank you.
Thank you, Joe.